Before we begin, understand this. If you are listening to this, it means something in your life is under pressure. Your work, your finances, your relationships, your future. And right now, the world is trying to pull you into panic. Most people break here. They react emotionally. They rush decisions. They lose control. This audiobook exists for one reason: to make sure you are not one of them. On this channel, we do not teach motivation. We teach mental control, emotional discipline, and calm dominance under pressure. So before we go any further, do one thing now. Subscribe to this channel. Not later, not at the end, now. Because if you stay here, if you listen to this entire audiobook, you will learn the exact mental framework that allows you to stay calm when everything is falling apart. And at the very end, I will give you one principle that most people never learn. A principle that separates those who collapse under pressure from those who quietly take control when it matters most. Do not skip. Do not multitask. Do not leave early. This is not background noise. This is training. Chaos is not your enemy. Your reaction to chaos is. Listen carefully. This is how you stay calm when everything is falling apart. Chapter 1. Panic is a habit, not a reaction. Panic feels automatic. It feels like something that happens to you. It is not. Panic is a habit, a trained response, a loop you have rehearsed under pressure for years. That is the first truth you must accept if you want control. You have a choice. Most people believe that panic proves who they are. They say, that is just how I react. They say, I cannot help it. They say, I am not built for pressure. That is a lie. Pressure does not create panic. Pressure reveals training, not character. Say it again. Pressure reveals training, not character. When stress hits, your brain does not invent a response. It retrieves one. It plays the program you have installed through repetition. If panic shows up fast, it means you trained it well. That is not an insult. That is good news, because habits can be replaced. High performers are not calm because they are special. They are calm because they practice calm responses when it mattered. They trained themselves. Look at how panic actually works. Something unexpected happens. An email, a phone call, a number drops, a plan breaks. Your body reacts before your mind thinks. Heart rate spikes, breathing shortens, muscles tighten, thoughts race. This is not a weakness. This is biology. But what happens next is the habit. Most people immediately do what they always do. They rush, they react, they speak too fast, they explain too much. They make decisions to escape discomfort, not to solve the problem. They call this instinct. It is not instinct. It is a rehearsal. You have a choice. Every time pressure hit in the past, you reacted the same way. You taught your nervous system that panic is useful. That urgency equals action. That emotional movement equals control. It does not. It creates damage. Panic feels productive, but it is destructive. It creates the illusion of movement while destroying clarity. That is the key. High performers feel the same physical stress you do. Their hearts still beat faster. Their body still senses danger. The difference is not feeling. The difference is in response. It is not about emotion. It is about discipline. They do not remove stress. They interrupt the habit. Pressure reveals training, not character. Think about this carefully. If panic were a character, it would be permanent. If panic were a personality trait, it would be unchangeable. Yet people change how they respond to pressure every day. Soldiers, surgeons, pilots, leaders. They are trained not to panic, not because panic disappears, but because they do not obey it. You do not need their permission to retrain yourself. Here is where most people fail. They try to calm down after panic has already taken control. They try to reason while emotional. They try to think clearly while under pressure. That never works. You do not beat panic with logic. You beat it with interruption. The habit must be broken early, immediately. At the first signal, you have a choice. The moment pressure appears, you must do one thing differently. Not everything, just one thing. You slow down. That sounds simple. It is not easy. Slowing down feels dangerous when panic is present. Your brain screams that you must act now, speak now, fix now. That voice is not wisdom, it is a habit. Pressure reveals training, not character. High performers slow down not because they feel safe, but because they trust discipline more than emotion. They pause, they breathe, they create space. Space kills panic. Panic survives on momentum. It feeds on speed. It grows when you stack reactions on top of reactions. Slow the process and panic starves. This is the first behavioral instruction of this book. When pressure hits, you do not respond immediately. You do not answer. You do not explain. You do not decide. You pause. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. That pause is not a weakness, it is power. You have a choice. During that pause, you do not ask, "How do I feel?" You ask, "What is actually happening?" Facts calm the mind. Stories create panic. Separate them. What exactly happened? Not what you fear will happen, not what it reminds you of, not what it could mean. Just what happened. High performers do this automatically because they have been trained to. You can train it too. The second instruction is even more important. You stop labeling the moment as a crisis. Words shape response. When you call something an emergency, your body believes you. When you say everything is falling apart, your nervous system obeys. Most situations are problems, not crises. A delay is not a disaster. A mistake is not a collapse. A conflict is not failure. Pressure reveals training, not character. High performers use neutral language under stress. They do not dramatize. They do not inflate. They say, "There is an issue." They say, "We lost this option." They say, "We need a new approach." Neutral language creates neutral physiology. That is the key. You have a choice. Every time pressure hits, you either reinforce panic or retrain calm. There is no middle ground. Each reaction is a vote. Vote enough times for panic, and it becomes automatic. Vote enough times for control, and panic loses authority. This is why waiting for calm feelings is a mistake. Calm comes after discipline, not before. It is not about comfort. It is about control. The third instruction is this: you narrow your focus. Panic expands the battlefield. It makes everything feel urgent. Everything feels connected. Everything feels overwhelming. High performers do the opposite. They shrink the moment. They ask one question: what is the next correct action? Not the full solution, not the outcome, not the entire plan. Just the next move. That question cuts through chaos like a blade. You have a choice. When pressure hits, you can try to solve everything at once, or you can solve one thing well. Only one of those creates control. Pressure reveals training, not character. This chapter is not about becoming fearless. Fear is irrelevant. This chapter is about becoming disciplined under pressure. Panic is not who you are. It is what you practiced. And practice can change. You do not need permission to pause. You do not need permission to slow down. You do not need permission to respond differently than you did yesterday. That is the discipline. When pressure hits next time, remember this: panic is not a reaction, it is a habit. Habits can be interrupted. Habits can be replaced. You have a choice. You have learned how panic starts. You have learned how it survives. and you have learned the first steps to shut it down. But there is another trap waiting. Even when people slow down, even when they pause, they fall into it. It is urgency disguised as importance, emotion pretending to be a necessity. You mastered the idea that panic is trained. Now you must learn how urgency hijacks decision-making. Chapter 2. Emotional urgency is the first trap. Emotional urgency feels like intelligence. It feels like awareness. It feels like being on top of things. It is not. Emotional urgency is panic wearing a smarter mask. This is where most people fail, even after they learn to pause. They slow down for a moment. They breathe. They tell themselves they are calm. And then urgency sneaks in. You have a choice. Urgency says, this must be handled now. Urgency says, if I don't act immediately, something bad will happen. Urgency says this cannot wait. Urgency creates speed without clarity. That is the trap. Pressure reveals training, not character. High performers do not confuse urgency with importance. Average performers do it constantly. Here is the truth you must accept. Most things that feel urgent are not important. And most importantly, things do not feel urgent. Emotional urgency hijacks your decision-making by collapsing time. It forces you to decide before you think. It pushes you to act before you understand. That is not leadership, and that is a reaction. It is not about intelligence. It is about discipline. Think about your worst decisions. They were not made slowly. They were not made calmly. They were made under emotional pressure. An email that triggered you, a message that scared you, a conversation that caught you off guard. You reacted fast. You spoke too much. You committed too early. You chose relief over strategy. Urgency rewards speed. Strategy rewards patience. You have a choice. Urgency feels dangerous because it runs on fear. Fear of loss, fear of being judged, fear of missing out, fear of things getting worse. High performers feel that fear too. The difference is not emotion. The difference is obedience. They do not obey urgency. They question it. That is the key. When urgency arises, treat it as suspicious. Urgency must earn action. It does not get it automatically. Here is the discipline. The moment something feels urgent, you stop and ask one question. What happens if I wait? Not forever, not irresponsibly. Just wait. 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour. Most urgency collapses when you apply time. That is how you expose it. If waiting creates a catastrophe, it may be important. If waiting changes nothing, it was noise. Pressure reveals training, not character. Most people never test urgency. They submit to it. They answer immediately. They agree immediately. They fix it immediately. And then they pay the price later. High performers reverse the process. They delay first. They assess second. They act last. You do not need their permission to wait. This applies everywhere. Emails marked urgent. Calls that demand immediate attention. People who want instant decisions. Urgency is often a transfer of stress. Someone else failed to plan. Someone else panicked. Someone else wants relief, and they want you to carry it. You have a choice. You can accept their urgency as your responsibility, or you can keep control of your timeline. High performers protect their timeline fiercely. They understand something most people do not. Urgency is addictive. It makes you feel needed. It makes you feel important. It makes you feel valuable. That feeling is dangerous. It trains you to react instead of think. It trains you to chase fires rather than build systems. Pressure reveals training, not character. Here is a critical distinction. Urgency is emotional. Importance is strategic. Urgency screams. Importance whispers. Urgency demands attention now. Importance rewards attention over time. Most people spend their lives reacting to urgent noise while neglecting important foundations. That is why they feel busy but unstable. High performers invert this. They starve urgency, they feed importance. This is the second behavioral instruction of this book. You build a delay habit, not procrastination, not avoidance. Deliberate delay. When something feels urgent, you slow your response on purpose. You do not explain. You do not justify. You do not apologize. You simply say, "I need time to think." That sentence is powerful. It breaks the urgency spell. You have a choice. You either let urgency control your behavior or you control the timeline. There is no neutral position. Now let's talk about why urgency is so convincing. Urgency narrows your thinking. It removes nuance. It turns complex situations into false binaries. Act or fail, respond or lose. Fix now or suffer later. That is emotional thinking, not rational thinking. High performers expand the frame. They ask better questions. What is actually at risk? What is reversible? What decision locks me in? Most urgent decisions are reversible. Most panic-driven actions are not. That is the irony. Urgency pushes you to make permanent decisions in the heat of the moment. That is how people destroy leverage. That is how they damage relationships. That is how they create long-term problems trying to fix short-term discomfort. You have a choice. The next instruction is this: you separate speed from decisiveness. Calm people are not slow. They are precise. They move fast after clarity, not before. Urgent people move fast without direction. Decisive people move deliberately. That is the difference. Pressure reveals training, not character. High performers train themselves to be decisive, not reactive. They do not confuse hesitation with thoughtfulness. They do not confuse speed with competence. They know when to move fast and when to wait. Urgency removes that judgment. It flattens everything into now. You must resist that. Here is a practical rule. If a decision feels emotionally loaded, delay it. Emotional load is a signal. It means your nervous system is active. It means your perception is distorted. Waiting restores clarity. That is not a weakness. That is leadership. You do not need their permission to think. The final instruction in this chapter is simple but difficult. You stop rewarding urgency. Every time you respond immediately, urgency wins. Every time you drop your priorities to handle someone else's panic, urgency grows stronger. People learn how to treat you by what you tolerate. If you always respond fast, they will always demand speed. If you create a delay, they adapt. High performers train their environment. They do not advertise availability. They do not celebrate busyness. They do not glorify urgencies. They build space. Space creates power. You have a choice. You can live in constant reaction, or you can live in control. Emotional urgency is the first trap because it makes you feel responsible. It is not. It is the enemy of clarity. You now understand that panic is a habit. You now understand that urgency hijacks judgment. But there is something even more dangerous. Even when urgency fades, your mind will betray you. It will invent stories. It will predict disaster. It will exaggerate the meaning. You must learn to separate reality from interpretation. You mastered the pause. You learned to resist urgency. Now it is time to dismantle the stories that create panic in the first place. Chapter 3. Separate the event from the story. What destroys your calm is not what happens. It is what you tell yourself about what happens. This is where panic actually lives, not in reality, not in fact, not in events. It lives in the story. You have a choice. An event occurs, a message arrives, a plan changes, a number disappoints. That is the event. Everything that follows is an interpretation. Most people merge the two instantly. They treat the story as if it were a fact. They react to imagination as if it were reality. Pressure reveals training, not character. High performers are trained to separate the event from the story. Everyone else lets them blend. Here is the difference. The event is neutral. The story is emotional. The event is limited. The story expands endlessly. The event is now. The story jumps to the future. That is the key. Let's slow this down. An email arrives late. That is the event. The story says, they are unhappy. They are losing trust. This is going to spiral. I am in trouble. None of that happened. It was invented. A deal falls through. That is the event. The story says, I failed. I always mess this up. This proves I am not good enough. Again, invention. Most panic is not a response to reality. It is a response to imagined consequences. You have a choice. Your brain is designed to create meaning. Under pressure, it creates meaning fast. Speed replaces accuracy. This is not intelligence. It is survival wiring. But survival wiring is outdated in modern decision-making. High performers understand this. They do not trust the first story their mind produces. They interrogate it. That is discipline. Pressure reveals training, not character. Here is the rule you must adopt. Facts are calm. Stories are loud. If something feels overwhelming, you are in a story. Always, reality is manageable. Stories are dramatic. You must learn to hear the difference. The event is short. The story is long. The event can be written in one sentence. The story takes paragraphs. That is your first filter. When pressure hits, write down the event in one sentence. Just one, no adjectives, no emotion, no prediction. Example: the client delayed the decision. That is the event. Everything else is story. This means they do not trust me. This will hurt my reputation. This always happens. I am losing momentum. All stories. You have a choice. You either react to the story or you act on the event. High performers act on events. They treat stories as noise until proven otherwise. This is not denial. This is clarity. Most people believe stories are intuitive. They are not. Intuition is quiet. Stories are urgent. Intuition gives options. Stories demand action. That is the key. Here is another example. A mistake happens. The event. A mistake was made. The story. This will cost everything. They will remember this. I am exposed. High performers stop here. They ask one question. What is required now? Not what does this mean? Not how bad is this? Not who is to blame? What is required? That question pulls you back to reality. You have a choice. When something goes wrong, you can spiral inward, or you can orient outward. Stories are internal. Action is external. Pressure reveals training, not character. Most people believe that thinking more will save them. It does not. Thinking feeds stories. Doing interrupts them. But only the right kind of doing. Not frantic activity, not an emotional reaction. Deliberate action. This chapter gives you a critical behavioral instruction. When you feel panic rising, you must label the story. Literally say to yourself, this is a story. That label creates distance. Distance creates control. You do not argue with the story. You do not fight it. You do not try to replace it with positivity. You simply do not obey it. You acknowledge it and return to the event. That is discipline. You have a choice. Your mind will always create narratives under pressure. That will never stop. Control comes from choosing which narratives you act on. High performers allow thoughts to exist without letting them lead. That is the difference between composure and collapse. Let's talk about the most dangerous story of all, the personal story. This is when an event becomes about you. They did not respond. The story says they do not respect me. The plan failed. The story says, I am incompetent. The project struggled. The story says, this defines me. That is identity fusion. It is poison. Pressure reveals training, not character. High performers never tie identity to outcomes. They tie identity to behavior. Outcomes fluctuate. Behavior is controlled. It is not about what happens. It is about how you respond. That is the key. Here is the discipline. You separate yourself from the situation. You do not say, I failed. You say, that approach failed. You do not say, I am losing control. You say, this variable changed. Language matters. Language shapes response. Neutral language keeps you calm. Dramatic language fuels panic. You have a choice. Every time you personalize an event, you increase emotional load. Every time you depersonalize it, you regain clarity. This is not avoidance. This is professionalism. High performers treat problems like engineers, not judges. They diagnose, they adjust, they move forward. Judgment creates paralysis. Analysis creates movement. That is the difference. Here is another instruction. Stop predicting the future under pressure. Prediction is not planning. Prediction during stress is fear pretending to be foresight. Most future scenarios you imagine under pressure never come to pass, but the damage from reacting to them does. You do not need their permission to stop predicting disaster. If something is not happening now, it does not deserve your emotional energy. Focus on the present action. That is control. Pressure reveals training, not character. Now let's connect this back to the core theme. Staying calm when everything is falling apart does not mean denying reality. It means refusing to add unnecessary meaning to it. Calm people see clearly. Clear people act effectively. Effective action restores stability. Panic people see stories. Stories amplify fear. Fear creates mistakes. You have a choice. You can live inside imagined futures, or you can operate inside the current reality. Only one produces results. This chapter is about mental separation, the event on one side, story on the other. You decide which one drives your behavior. That decision is discipline, and discipline compounds. You now understand how panic forms. You understand how urgency hijacks you. You understand how stories distort reality. But there is another shift required. Even with clarity, even without stories, many people still collapse. Why? Because they believe calm is weakness. They think control means softness. They think authority requires emotion. That belief is false. Calm is not passive. Calm is power. You separated the event from the story. Now you must learn why calm itself is a position of dominance. Chapter 4. Calm is a position of power. Most people misunderstand calm. They think calm is softness. They think calm is passivity. They think calm means you do not care. That belief keeps them weak. Calm is not the absence of intensity. Calm is the presence of control. That is the first truth of this chapter. You have a choice. When chaos appears, you can match its energy, or you can dominate it. Matching chaos feels natural. Dominating chaos requires discipline. Pressure reveals training, not character. Look closely at how power actually works. In every high-stakes situation, the calmest person controls the frame. They control the pace. They control the direction. Not because they are louder, not because they react faster, Because everyone else is emotionally exposed. Emotion leaks power. Calm concentrates it. That is the key. Think about negotiations, conflicts, crises. Who holds authority? Not the person speaking the most, not the person defending themselves, not the person explaining. It is the person who pauses, the person who listens, the person who is not rushed. Silence plus calm creates pressure on everyone else. You have a choice. When others are emotional, they give away leverage. They reveal fear, they reveal attachment, and they reveal urgency. Calm reveals nothing. Calm forces others to fill the space. They talk more. They justify more. They expose their position. This is not manipulation. This is human psychology. Pressure reveals training, not character. High performers understand this instinctively. They do not rush to defend themselves. They do not rush to prove competence. They do not rush to control perception. They let calm do the work. That is dominance. Here is where most people fail. They think they must show intensity to be taken seriously. They believe calm will be interpreted as weakness. The opposite is true. Intensity signals a lack of control. Calm signals authority. Watch leaders under real pressure, military commanders, crisis surgeons, experienced CEOs. They do not escalate emotionally. They lower their voice. They slow their movements. They bring the room down to their level. That is power. You have a choice. When stress rises, you can raise your emotional volume, or you can lower it and take control of the environment. One creates chaos, the other creates order. Pressure reveals training, not character. Calm is also contagious. Emotions spread faster than logic. Panic spreads panic. Calm spreads stability. If you are calm, others begin to slow down. They mirror your pace. They follow your lead. This is why calm leaders attract loyalty. People do not follow the smartest person. They follow the most stable one. Stability feels safe. Safety creates trust. Trust creates influence. That is the chain. You do not need their permission to be calm. Now let's address the internal resistance. Calm feels uncomfortable when you are used to reacting. It feels like inaction. It feels like a delay. Your nervous system will fight it. It will tell you to speak, that you should explain, that you should assert yourself. That voice is a habit, not wisdom. Calm does not mean you do nothing. It means you act without emotional leakage. It is not about speed. It is about precision. High performers move when they choose, not when pressure pushes them. That is the difference. Here is a critical instruction. When you feel the urge to react emotionally, do the opposite physically. If you want to speak fast, slow your speech. If you want to interrupt, stay silent. If you want to justify, pause. Your body leads your mind. Change the body, and the mind follows. Pressure reveals training, not character. This is not about suppressing emotion. Suppression creates tension. This is about containment. You allow emotion to exist without letting it control behavior. That is discipline. Calm is not passive. It still acts. It just acts cleanly. Anger creates sloppy decisions. Fear creates defensive decisions. Urgency creates premature decisions. Calm creates correct decisions. That is the key. Now let's talk about presence. Calm presence changes how people perceive you instantly. When you are calm, you appear confident. When you are calm, you appear competent. When you are calm, people assume you know something they do not. Perception matters. Not because you seek approval, but because authority influences outcomes. Calm people are given more space, more time, more trust. Emotionally, people are managed. Calm people are consulted. You have a choice. Circumstances can manage you, or you can be consulted by others. Pressure reveals training, not character. This chapter demands a behavioral shift. You must stop equating emotional expression with strength. Strength is restraint. Strength is the ability to feel intensity without becoming it. Here is your daily practice. When tension appears, lower your physical intensity. Slow your breathing. Relax your shoulders. Drop your jaw. Ground your feet. These are not small details. They are control mechanisms. Your nervous system cannot stay panicked in a relaxed body. Calm begins physically. That is the key. Now understand this. Calm does not mean you tolerate chaos. Calm allows you to correct chaos. Emotion clouds judgment. Judgment creates solutions. If you want to fix what is falling apart, you must see clearly. You cannot see clearly while emotionally flooded. That is why calm is power. You have a choice. You can react to the storm, or you can become the eye of it. The eye is still. The storm moves around it. High performers operate from the centers. They let noise pass without entering it. They let emotions move without following them. Pressure reveals training, not character. Let's connect this to the larger theme. Staying calm when everything is falling apart is not about pretending things are fine. It is about refusing to lose position. Calm keeps you positioned. Position creates options. Options create solutions. Panic removes options. Emotion narrows vision. Calm expands it. That is the hierarchy. You now understand that calm is not weakness, it is leverage. But calm alone is not enough. Calm creates space. What you do with that space matters. Many people become calm and then freeze. They hesitate. They overthink. That is another trap. You must learn how to use calm to move forward, not stall. The next discipline is critical. You must learn how to control the most powerful physical lever you have in moments of chaos. Your breathing. You learned that calm is power. Now you must learn how to access calm instantly, on demand. Chapter 5. Control your breathing or lose the moment. If you lose control of your breathing, you lose control of the moment. Not eventually, immediately. Breathing is not just about air. It is a command. Your breath tells your nervous system whether you are safe or under threat. It tells your body whether to think or react. It tells your mind whether to slow down or spiral. That is the first truth of this chapter. You have a choice. Under pressure, most people breathe badly. Shallow, fast, chaotic. They do not notice it, but their body does, and their body takes over. Pressure reveals training, not character. When breathing becomes shallow, your body believes you are in danger. When your body believes you are in danger, clarity disappears. Logic shuts down. Urgency spikes. Panic returns. This is not psychology. This is physiology. You cannot think your way out of a panicked body. You must breathe your way out first. That is the key. High performers do not wait to calm down mentally. They regulate the body first because the body leads the mind. You have a choice. When pressure hits, you either let your breathing run unconsciously or you take control. Only one of those creates composure. Here is the mistake most people make. They try to breathe deeply. They force big breaths. They inhale too much. They tense up. That makes it worse. Control is not about depth. It is about rhythm. Slow breathing tells the nervous system there is no immediate threat. Fast breathing tells it to prepare for impact. Your breathing rate matters more than your breathing volume. That is the key. Here is the rule you must internalize. If your breath is fast, your thinking is compromised. Always. No exceptions. Pressure reveals training, not character. High performers train breathing the same way others train skills. They do not wait until panic hits. They build automatic control. This chapter gives you a weapon, not motivation, not mindset. A physical override. Here is the technique. When pressure hits, you exhale first, not inhale. Exhale. Long, slow, controlled. Why? Because exhalation activates your body's calming system. Inhalation activates energy. Most panicked people inhale more. They stack air. They increase tension. You must reverse this. Exhale longer than you inhale. That is discipline. You have a choice. The simplest version looks like this. Inhale through the nose for 4 seconds. Exhale through the mouth for 6 seconds. Do it again and again. Within 30 seconds, your nervous system shifts. Not because you convinced yourself, because you changed the signal. Pressure reveals training, not character. This is not optional. If you want control under chaos, breathing is non-negotiable. Now let's talk about timing. Breathing must happen before action, not during the explanation, not after reaction. Before. The moment you feel tension rise, you breathe, not later. That delay is everything. Most people notice stress after it controls them. High performers notice it at the first signal. Tight chest, clenched jaw, shallow breath. Those are cues. Cues are opportunities. You have a choice. Ignore them and spiral. Or act immediately and regain control. Breathing buys you time. Time buys you clarity. Clarity buys you power. That is the chain. Now understand this. Controlled breathing does not make you passive. It makes you precise. You do not become slower. You become intentional. Calm breathing sharpens decision-making. It expands your perception. It reduces tunnel vision. It restores access to reasoning. This is why professionals breathe under pressure. Pilots, snipers, surgeons, they do not hype themselves up. They slow themselves down. Pressure reveals training, not character. You do not need their permission to pause and breathe. This applies everywhere. During confrontation, during negotiation, during a crisis. When someone raises their voice, you lower yours. When someone rushes you, you slow your breath. When something breaks, you exhale. Breathing is how you refuse to be pulled into chaos. That is dominance. Here is a critical behavioral instruction. Never speak on the first breath. When pressure hits and you feel the urge to respond, breathe first. Always. Speaking on a panicked breath guarantees poor wording. Poor wording escalates situations. Escalation creates damage. Silence plus breathing creates leverage. You have a choice. You can fill space with emotion, or you can control space with calm. Pressure reveals training, not character. Now let's talk about habit. You cannot rely on remembering this under stress. You must train it. Breathing control must become automatic. Here is how. You practice it when nothing is wrong, daily, not for hours, for minutes. Several times a day, intentionally slow your breathing, even when calm. This teaches your nervous system that slow breathing is normal. Then, under pressure, it activates faster. That is how habits form. High performers train calmly the same way others train speed. They do not wait for chaos. You have a choice. You either train control now or panic trains you later. Pressure reveals training, not character. Another mistake people make is breathing only when overwhelmed. That is too late. You must use breath as a preventative tool, before meetings, before difficult conversations, before decisions. Preparation beats recovery. That is discipline. Now let's connect breathing to identity. People who cannot control their breath cannot control their behavior. People who cannot control their behavior lose authority. Breathing is leadership. If you cannot regulate yourself, you cannot regulate a situation. Calm leaders stabilize environments. Breathing is how you become that leader. You have a choice. You can let your body dictate your mind, or you can command both. This chapter is not about relaxation, it is about readiness. Slow breathing prepares you to act cleanly. You do not freeze, you do not rush, you move with precision. That is the goal. Pressure reveals training, not character. Now understand this final point. Breathing is the fastest way to regain control. But control alone is not enough. Once calm is restored, you must decide what matters. Calm creates space. Space must be used correctly. Otherwise, calm turns into hesitation. That is the next trap. You have learned how to control panic. You have learned how to resist urgency. You have learned how to separate story from event. You have learned that calm is power. You have learned how to access calm through breath. Now you must learn how to use that calm strategically. You must learn how to narrow your focus when everything feels overwhelming. Because even calm people fail when they try to do too much at once. You controlled the moment. Now you must control the battlefield. Chapter 6. Shrink the battlefield. When everything feels overwhelming, it is because your battlefield is too large. Panic does not come from one problem. It comes from too many problems in your head at once. That is the first truth of this chapter. You have a choice. Under pressure, most people widen their focus. They try to fix everything. They try to think of every consequence. They try to control every variable. That is how they lose control. Pressure reveals training, not character. High performers do the opposite. They shrink the battlefield. They reduce chaos into something manageable. They turn noise into a single objective. That is the key. Look at how overwhelm actually works. A problem appears, then another, then another. Your mind stacks them. What if this fails? What if that goes wrong? What if I lose leverage? What if this affects everything else? Soon, you are no longer dealing with reality. You are dealing with accumulation. Accumulation kills clarity. High performers break accumulation immediately. They refuse to fight on all fronts. You have a choice. You can try to win everywhere, or you can win somewhere. Only one leads to progress. Shrinking the battlefield means choosing the smallest meaningful action, not the perfect solution, not the outcome. The next correct move. That phrase matters. The next correct move. Pressure reveals training, not character. When chaos hits, you do not ask, "How do I fix everything?" You ask, "What is the most important thing I can do next?" That question restores order. It narrows focus. It removes excess. It creates direction. That is control. Most people avoid this because it feels insufficient. They want certainty. They want closure. They want guarantees. There are none. Leadership does not require certainty. It requires motion, clean motion. You have a choice. You either freeze because you cannot solve everything, or you move because you can solve something. High performers move. That is discipline. Pressure reveals training, not character. Let's make this practical. When pressure hits, your first task is elimination, not addition. You do not ask, "What should I do?" You ask, "What can I ignore right now?" Ignoring is not neglect. It is a strategy. Not everything deserves your attention at the same time. High performers know what not to touch. That is why they stay effective. Here is the instruction. You list everything that feels urgent or broken. Then you cross out everything that does not require immediate action, not emotional urgency, actual necessity. Most items disappear. That is clarity. You have a choice. You can react to everything, or you can prioritize ruthlessly. Ruthless prioritization is not cruelty. It is leadership. Pressure reveals training, not character. Now understand this. Shrinking the battlefield also means shrinking time. You do not plan months during chaos. You do not forecast far-off outcomes. You operate in short windows. What matters in the next 10 minutes? The next hour? Today? Long-term thinking returns after stability. Trying to plan far ahead while unstable creates anxiety. High performers sequence thinking: first, stabilize, then optimize. That is the order. You have a choice. You can overwhelm yourself with future scenarios, or you can ground yourself in the present task. Only one creates momentum. Momentum kills panic. That is the key. Another critical instruction: stop multitasking under pressure. Multitasking fractures attention. Fractured attention creates mistakes. High performers single task aggressively during chaos. One problem, one action. Complete it, then move to the next. This is not slow. It is efficient. Speed without focus is chaos. Focus creates real speed. Pressure reveals training, not character. Here is the mindset shift. You are not here to solve everything. You are here to advance your position. Every correct move improves position. A better position reveals better options. This is how control is built. One move at a time. You have a choice. You can try to control outcomes, or you can control actions. Outcomes are delayed. Actions are immediate. High performers invest in what they can control. That is discipline. Now let's address resistance. Shrinking the battlefield feels uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of control. The illusion says, if I think about everything, I am safe. That is false. Thinking about everything creates paralysis. Action creates safety. High performers accept that some things will remain unresolved temporarily. They do not panic over that. They trust the process. Pressure reveals training, not character. This chapter demands restraint. You must stop trying to be everywhere. You must stop trying to solve everything. You must stop trying to address every concern. You do one thing well, then another. That is how chaos becomes manageable. Here is your practical rule. If you cannot act on something now, you do not think about it now. Thinking without action is mental clutter. Clutter fuels anxiety. Clean focus calms the mind. You have a choice. Every moment of pressure is an opportunity to simplify. Simplification is power. High performers simplify relentlessly. Now connect this back to the book's theme. Staying calm when everything is falling apart is not about suppressing stress. It is about controlling scope. A small scope is manageable. A large scope is overwhelming. Shrinking the battlefield gives calm direction. Calm without direction becomes hesitation. Direction without calm becomes recklessness. You now have both. You have learned how to control panic. You have learned how to resist urgency. You have learned how to separate story from event. You have learned that calm is power. You have learned how to access calm through breathing. You have learned how to shrink chaos into action. But there is still one major mistake people make. Even after all of this, they sabotage themselves. They become attached. They cling to outcomes. They fear losing. They fear failure. Attachment reintroduces panic. You must learn how to detach, because clarity requires distance. You shrank the battlefield. Now you must free your mind from the obsession with outcomes. Chapter 7. Detach from outcomes to think clearly. Attachment is the silent return of panic. You can be calm. You can breathe. You can shrink the battlefield and still lose control if you cling to outcomes. That is the truth of this chapter. You have a choice. Attachment feels responsible. It feels invested. It feels like caring. It is not. Attachment is fear disguised as commitment. Pressure reveals training, not character. When you attach yourself to a specific outcome, you narrow your vision. You stop seeing options. You stop adapting. You start forcing. Forcing creates mistakes. That is the key. Let's define attachment clearly. Attachment is when your emotional state depends on a result you do not control. If this works, I am fine. If this fails, everything collapses. That mindset guarantees instability. High performers do not attach to outcomes. They attach to the process. They do not obsess over winning. They obsess over executing correctly. Outcomes follow execution. They never precede it. You have a choice. You can tie your peace to results, or you can tie your peace to discipline. Only one of those is stable. Pressure reveals training, not character. Here is why attachment destroys clarity. When you want something too badly, you stop seeing reality as it is. You start seeing reality as you need it to be. You ignore warning signs. You rationalize bad decisions. You push when you should pivot. Attachment turns information into a threat. High performers want results, but they do not need them to think clearly. That difference matters. Detachment is not indifference. Detachment is freedom. It allows you to adjust without ego. It allows you to change course without shame. It allows you to walk away without panic. That is power. You have a choice. You can cling and hope, or you can detach and observe. Observation beats hope every time. Pressure reveals training, not character. Think about the moments you lost control. You were attached to being right, attached to being liked, attached to winning quickly, attached to avoiding loss. That attachment led you to make emotional decisions. It made you defend instead of listen. It made you rush instead of assess. It made you double down instead of step back. Detachment would have saved you. Here is the discipline. You separate effort from result. You measure yourself by behavior, not outcome. Did you prepare well? Did you act deliberately? Did you respond calmly? If yes, you succeeded. Regardless of the outcome, this removes fear. Fear only exists when results define identity. You have a choice. You either define yourself by what happens to you or by how you act. High performers choose the second. That is the key. Now let's address resistance. Most people fear detachment because they think it reduces motivation. They believe pressure is required to perform. It is not. Pressure distorts performance. Focus enhances it. Detachment does not reduce effort. It increases quality. When you are detached, you are free to think. When you are attached, you are trapped. Pressure reveals training, not character. Here is a critical instruction. Before any high-stakes situation, you must decide this. I will act correctly regardless of outcome. Say it. That sentence removes fear. It shifts your focus from control to execution. You cannot control outcomes. You can control actions. This is not philosophy. This is practicality. High performers build their identity on controllables. They leave the uncontrollables alone. You have a choice. You can fight reality, or you can work with it. Detachment means accepting uncertainty. Acceptance creates calm. Resistance creates stress. That is the difference. Another instruction. Stop rehearsing success and failure in your head. Mental rehearsals under pressure are almost always negative. They drain energy. They create emotional volatility. High performers stay focused on the current task. They do not live in future results. If your mind jumps to outcomes, bring it back. What is the next correct action? That question anchors you. Pressure reveals training, not character. Now understand this. Attachment also shows up as over-control, micromanaging, forcing timelines, demanding certainty. These behaviors come from fear. Detachment allows delegation. It allows trust. It allows patience. Patience is not passivity. Patience is confidence in the process. That is power. You have a choice. You can tighten your grip, or you can loosen it and see more clearly. Only one improves judgment. Here is a practical exercise. When you feel anxious about an outcome, ask yourself, what would I do differently if I were not afraid of the result? That answer is usually correct. Fear distorts action. Detachment restores accuracy. Pressure reveals training, not character. This chapter is about freedom. Freedom from emotional hostage-taking. Freedom from outcome obsession. Freedom from fear-driven decisions. Calm thinkers are dangerous because they are not desperate. Desperation leaks power. Detachment seals it. You do not need their permission to detach. You do not need approval to stay centered. You do not need guarantees to act well. That is leadership. Now connect this back to the theme. Staying calm when everything is falling apart requires distance. Distance from stories. Distance from urgency. Distance from outcomes. Distance creates perspective. Perspective creates control. You have learned how to pause, how to breathe, how to shrink chaos, how to detach. But there is one final behavior that separates calm thinkers from reactive ones. It is silent. Not the absence of words, the discipline of restraint. Even detached, calm people can undermine their position by speaking too soon. You learned how to think clearly. Now you must learn how to speak strategically. Chapter 8. Silence is a strategic weapon. Silence makes most people uncomfortable. That is why it works. In moments of pressure, silence feels risky. It feels passive. It feels like weakness. It is not. Silence is control without exposure. That is the first truth of this chapter. You have a choice. When tension rises, you can fill the space, or you can hold it. Most people fill it. They explain, they justify, they talk themselves into mistakes. High performers hold it. Pressure reveals training, not character. Silence is not the absence of action. It is the absence of leakage. Every word you speak under pressure reveals something. Fear, attachment, urgency, insecurity. Silence reveals nothing. That is power. Think about the moments you lost leverage. You spoke too soon. You answered before thinking. You explained more than necessary. You were not wrong. You were early. Timing matters. Silence buys time. Time buys clarity. Clarity buys precision. That is the chain. You have a choice. You can trade silence for relief, or you can keep silent and keep control. Relief is temporary. Control compounds. Pressure reveals training, not character. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people talk to calm themselves, not to improve outcomes. They speak to reduce their own anxiety. They speak to fill the discomfort. They speak to feel in control, but talking is not control. It is discharged. High performers manage anxiety internally. They do not dump it into the room. Silence keeps power where it belongs. Here is the discipline. When pressure appears, you delay speech. Not forever, not awkwardly, deliberately. You let others speak first. You listen more than you respond. You observe tone, pace, and emotion. This is not politeness. This is intelligence. Pressure reveals training, not character. Silence forces information out. People hate space. They rush to fill it. When you are silent, others explain, they justify, they reveal priorities, they expose leverage. You gain information without giving any. That is a strategic advantage. You have a choice. You can speak to be heard, or you can listen to understand. Understanding always wins. Now let's address the fear. Silence feels dangerous because it removes control of perception. You worry they will misinterpret. You worry they will judge. You worry they will think you are unsure. That fear is imaginary. Calm silence is rarely interpreted as weakness. It is interpreted as confidence. People assume you are thinking. They assume you are measured. They assume you are deliberate. That assumption works in your favor. Pressure reveals training, not character. Silence also slows the pace of the interaction. Speed favors emotion. Slowness favors reason. When you slow the conversation, urgency weakens. Urgency cannot survive silence. That is the key. Here is a critical instruction. Never speak while emotionally activated. And if you feel heat, if you feel pressure, if you feel the urge to defend, stay silent. Emotion plus speech equals regret. Silence plus breathing equals control. You have a choice. You can win the moment emotionally, or you can strategically win the situation. Strategic wins last. Another discipline. Answer questions with pauses, even simple questions. Pause before responding. That pause communicates authority. It signals that your words are chosen, not reactive. High performers do not rush answers. They let questions sit. Pressure reveals training, not character. This applies in negotiations. Silence after making a statement is powerful. When you speak and then stay quiet, others respond. When you keep talking, you negotiate against yourself. Silence protects your position. You do not need their permission to pause. You do not need approval to think. You do not need validation to be quiet. That is a strength. Now let's talk about internal silence. External silence is useless if your mind is noisy. You must also quiet internal commentary. Internal chatter fuels external leakage. High performers train internal restraint. They notice thoughts without acting on them. They do not narrate everything. They let thoughts pass. That restraint shows up in speech. Less noise inside creates fewer words outside. Pressure reveals training, not character. Here is the rule. If your words do not improve clarity, they add noise. Do not add noise under pressure. Noise escalates. Clarity stabilizes. Silence is clarity waiting. You have a choice. You can react verbally, or you can respond intentionally. Response beats reaction every time. Another instruction: do not explain your silence. Explaining weakens it. Silence that needs justification is not silence. It is fear disguised as restraint. You stay quiet. You breathe. You wait. That is enough. Pressure reveals training, not character. Now understand this. Silence does not mean disengagement. It means selective engagement. You speak when it matters. You speak when it moves things forward. You do not speak to soothe emotion. That distinction separates leaders from reactors. Leaders use silence to frame the conversation. They speak less but land harder. That is influence. You have a choice. You can be loud and forgettable, or quiet and commanding. Choose wisely. This chapter demands courage. Silence requires confidence. Confidence comes from discipline. Discipline comes from training. Pressure reveals training, not character. Let's connect this to the larger theme. Staying calm when everything is falling apart requires restraint. Restraint of breath, restraint of focus, restraint of speech. Every restraint strengthens your position. You now know how to pause, how to breathe, how to shrink chaos, how to detach from outcomes, how to use silence strategically. But there is one final reality you must accept. You cannot improvise calm in chaos. You must train it before you need it. Calm under pressure is built in ordinary moments. This is where most people fail. They wait. You will not. You mastered silence as a weapon. Now you must build the system that makes it calm and automatic. Chapter 9. Train. Calm before you need it. Calm does not appear on demand. It is not summoned. It is not improvised. Calm is trained. That is the first truth of this chapter. You have a choice. Most people wait for chaos and then hope they respond well. And they promise themselves they will stay calm next time. They rely on intention. Intention fails under pressure. Pressure reveals training, not character. High performers do not rise in chaos. They fall to the level of their preparation. That is the key. If you have not trained calmly, panic will take over automatically. Not because you are weak, because habits are faster than decisions. This is why calm must be built before it is needed, not during a crisis. Before it, you have a choice. You can practice being calm when nothing is wrong, or you can let chaos teach you lessons the hard way. Only one leads to control. Let's be clear. Training calm is not meditation retreats or perfect routines. It is a behavioral discipline applied daily. Small actions, repeated consistently. That is how habits form. Pressure reveals training, not character. Here is the mistake most people make. They only practice calm when stressed. That reinforces panic. They wait until the nervous system is already activated. Too late. High performers stay calm when the system is neutral. That is how control becomes automatic. Here is the first discipline. You slow yourself down intentionally every day, even when there is no reason. You walk more slowly. You speak more slowly. You breathe slower. You teach your body that slow is safe. That rewires your baseline. Then, when pressure hits, slow is available. You have a choice. Rush when nothing is wrong. Or train restraint. Restraint compounds. Pressure reveals training, not character. The second discipline is exposure. Avoidance strengthens panic. Exposure weakens it. High performers do not avoid pressure. They simulate it. They practice difficult conversations. They rehearse decisions. They intentionally expose themselves to mild stress. This builds tolerance. Tolerance builds confidence. Confidence builds calm. That is the chain. You do not need permission to practice discomfort. The third discipline is consistency. You cannot train calmly once a week. You cannot train it only when motivated. Calm is built through repetition, short sessions, daily. 5 minutes of breathing, intentional pauses before responses, choosing silence in low-stakes situations. These are not small actions. They are installing. Pressure reveals training, not character. Here is the truth. Your nervous system does not understand philosophy. It understands repetition. If you repeat calm behaviors, calm becomes the default. If you repeatedly engage in panic behaviors, panic becomes the default. You have a choice. Every day is a vote. Vote wisely. Another discipline. You must remove unnecessary stimulation. Constant noise trains reactivity. Notifications, alerts, endless input. High performers control input. They create quiet. Quiet trains focus. Focus trains calm. If your environment is chaotic, your mind will be too. You do not need their permission to reduce noise. Here is a critical instruction. Stop rehearsing chaos mentally. Constantly imagining worst-case scenarios trains panic. Your brain does not distinguish between real and imagined stress. What you rehearse, you reinforce. High performers rehearse control. They imagine themselves responding calmly, breathing slowly, choosing deliberately. Visualization is not fantasy. It is a rehearsal. Pressure reveals training, not character. Now understand this, training calm is not passive. It is uncomfortable. You will want to rush. You will want to react. You will want to fill the silence. Resisting those impulses is the work. That resistance is strength. You have a choice. You can choose comfort now or control later. Training calm requires choosing control now. Another discipline, you must stop glamorizing stress. Busyness is not competence. Urgency is not important. High performers do not celebrate chaos. They design stability. If your identity depends on being overwhelmed, calm will feel threatening. You must let that identity go. Pressure reveals training, not character. Here is the final instruction of this chapter. You build routines that protect calm. Morning routines, pre-meeting breathing, decision delays. These are systems. Systems beat willpower. Willpower fails under stress. Systems do not. You have a choice. Rely on motivation or build a structure. Structure creates freedom. This chapter is about ownership. Ownership of your nervous system. Ownership of your reactions. Ownership of your future behavior. You cannot control chaos, but you can control readiness. That is leadership. You now understand something most people never do. Calm is not a trait, it is a trained skill. You trained panic before. Now you train control. Pressure reveals training, not character. You have learned how to pause, how to breathe, how to shrink chaos, how to detach, how to use silence, how to train calmly daily. There is only one chapter left, the final shift. Because calm is not just for you, calm is influence. Calm is leadership. Calm is what others lean on when everything breaks. You trained yourself. Now you must become the one others rely on. Chapter 10. Become the calm others rely on. Calm is no longer just a personal skill. At this level, calm becomes responsibility. When everything breaks, people look for one thing: stability. They look for someone who does not flinch, someone who does not rush, someone who does not amplify fear. They look for calm. You have a choice. You can use calm only to protect yourself, or you can use calm to stabilize others. High performers choose the second. Pressure reveals training, not character. Here is the truth most people avoid. In chaos, leadership is assigned, not announced. No one votes, no one asks for credentials. People follow the calmest person in the room, and that is how it works. If you are calm, people orient toward you. If you are reactive, people avoid you. If you are emotional, people manage you. Calm creates gravity. That is the key. Becoming the calm others rely on does not require authority. It creates authority. You do not need a title. You do not need permission. You do not need validation. You need discipline. Pressure reveals training, not character. Let's be precise. When people are stressed, they lose perspective. They overestimate threats. They underestimate options. Your calm restores perspective. Not through speeches, not through reassurance, through presence. Presence is felt, not explained. You have a choice. You can convince people that everything is fine, or you can show them control through behavior. Behavior always wins. Here is what calm leadership looks like. You speak less, you listen more, you move deliberately. You do not mirror panic, you absorb it. That absorption stabilizes the room, it slows everyone down. Slow thinking returns. That is leadership. Pressure reveals training, not character. Now understand this. People do not need you to fix everything. They need you to anchor the moment. Fixing comes later. Stability comes first. Most people rush to solutions before stability exists. That creates confusion. Calm leaders stabilize first. They ask simple questions. They define the situation clearly. They reduce noise. They shrink the battlefield for everyone. You have a choice. You can escalate emotion, or you can compress chaos. Compression creates order. Here is a critical instruction. When others panic, you do not keep pace. You slow yours. Speed is contagious, so is calm. If you slow down, others follow. If you rush, they panic more. That is the responsibility of calm. Pressure reveals training, not character. Let's talk about language. Calm leaders use simple words, short sentences, clear direction. They do not speculate. They do not dramatize. They do not predict catastrophe. They speak in facts. Facts calm the nervous system. Stories inflame it. That is the key. You have a choice. You can speak to sound smart, or you can speak to create stability. Stability matters more. Another instruction. You do not rescue people emotionally. You do not soothe panic with reassurance. Reassurance can sound like denial. Instead, you ground. You say, "Here is what we know." You say, "Here is what we will do next." You say, "This is the priority." Clear structure reduces fear. Structure is calm in action. Pressure reveals training, not character. Now let's address the ego. The ego wants recognition. The ego wants credit. The ego wants to be seen as the hero. Calm leadership is quiet. It does not announce itself. If you need recognition, maintaining calm will be difficult. If you need approval, calm will feel risky. You must let that go. You do not need their permission to lead calmly. Leadership is service, not performance. Service is stabilizing others. Another truth, people will test your calm. They will challenge it. They will push. They will try to pull you into emotion, not intentionally, instinctively. Panic seeks company. Your job is not to join it. Your job is to hold the line. You have a choice. You can be dragged into the storm, or you can remain the anchor. Anchors do not move. Ships adjust around them. Pressure reveals training, not character. This chapter also requires boundaries. Being the calm others rely on does not mean absorbing everything. You do not take on all responsibility. You do not fix all emotions. You provide direction. You provide stability. You do not carry panic. That distinction protects you. Calm leaders protect their energy. They do not over-explain. They do not overcommit. They do not overfunction. They create clarity and step back. That allows others to rise. You have a choice. You can become indispensable through chaos, or indispensable through clarity. Clarity scales. Chaos does not. Now let's connect everything. You learned that panic is a habit. You learned that urgency is a trap. You learned to separate the event from the story. You learned that calm is power. You learned to control your breath. You learned to shrink the battlefield. You learned to detach from outcomes. You learned to use silence. You learned to train calmly daily. This chapter is an integration. All of that training leads here. Becoming the calm others rely on is the highest expression of control. It is not about dominance, it is about stability. Stability allows progress. Progress restores systems. Systems reduce chaos. That is how things are rebuilt. Pressure reveals training, not character. Now here is your final discipline. You must decide who you are under pressure before pressure arrives. Decide now. When things break, I slow down. When others rush, I breathe. When panic spreads, I stabilize. Identity precedes behavior. If you decide in advance, action follows automatically. You have a choice. You can leave this audiobook inspired, or you can leave it installed. Installation requires commitment. The commitment is simple. The next time pressure hits, you do not react emotionally. You pause. You breathe. You choose deliberately. That single decision changes everything. Because calm people do not just survive chaos, they thrive. They shape what comes next. That is the final lesson. And now the challenge. The next moment, things go wrong, and do not prove anything. Do not explain. Do not rush. Be still. Be precise. Be the calm others rely on. That is how you stay in control when everything is falling apart. Chaos will come again. It always does. It does not ask for permission. It does not wait until you are ready. It arrives when plans break, when pressure stacks, when certainty disappears. And when it does, remember this: calm is not luck. Calm is not a personality. Calm is trained. You learned that panic is not a reaction, it is a habit, and habits can be replaced. You learned that urgency is a trap. Speed without clarity destroys position. You learned to separate the event from the story. Facts are calm. Stories are loud. You learned that calm is not weakness. Calm is power. It is leverage. You learned to control your breathing because the body leads the mind. Lose the breath, lose the moment. You learn to shrink the battlefield. One correct action beats 1,000 worries. You learn to detach from outcomes because attachment creates fear, and fear destroys judgment. You learn that silence is not emptiness. Silence is a strategic weapon. You learned that calm must be trained before you need it, not improvised in a crisis. And finally, you learned that calm is not just for you. Calm is what others rely on when everything breaks. That is the framework. You do not need to control the world. You need to control your response. When others rush, you slow down. When others react, you observe. When others panic, you decide. That is the difference between collapse and control. Now here is your challenge. The next time pressure hits, do not speak immediately. Do not explain. Do not defend. Breathe. Shrink the moment. Choose the next correct action. Do that consistently and you will never lose control again. Not because chaos stops, but because you stop breaking. And if this audiobook resonated with you, there is one more you should listen to next. Stop giving your power away. Master emotional control for financial victory. It goes deeper into how emotional reactions quietly drain your authority, your money, and your leverage. If you want to move from calm thinking to unshakable self-mastery, that is the next step. And if you are serious about mastering your mind, subscribe to this channel now. We do not teach comfort here. We do not teach motivation. We teach control. Stay disciplined, stay calm, and stay dangerous under pressure.